I was told overnight that our interaction yesterday might not have been the most savory, and if it was brought over that way, I want to apologize. I don't mean, I know that the media is a friend of this process like we all are. We all have our job to do, and I don't want to be interpreted in any way, shape, or form as fettering that. And if I did come across in that way, I apologize, and I thank all of you for your continued service and support throughout this process. That being said, today, as I speak, I know you will ask me later on how many boxes were counted, etc. I came out, I don't have that figure. The last count that I heard was 35, but that number could have changed significantly. I am to specifically address a few matters this afternoon because I believe they are inimical to the smooth and efficient conduct of this process. The first issue is the shortening of the actual work hours. You'd recall the first day or the first information we had from the COVID task force, etc. We contemplated a work day from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. After the intervention of the chairperson of GECOM, that time was extended to 7 p.m. Now, what we have observed happening since the first day, that is to say Wednesday, what has happened is by afternoon, by 5 o'clock, when you certainly have 2 hours more to proceed for the day, you've had objections, particularly from agents of the APNU plus AFC stationed at the container in some instances, APNU agents stationed in counting stations who are objecting to the issue of a new box at around 5 o'clock in the afternoon. That has now manifested to directives, and as the days progress, that has manifested into directives coming from the Secretariat itself to the staff not to release boxes after 5 o'clock in the afternoon. That issue has come to the Commission today, and that suggestion was upheld by the chairman that boxes are not to be issued by after 5 o'clock in the afternoon. The pattern that we have seen today, so there are some boxes that are taking as little as half an hour to proceed. The fact of stopping the release of boxes at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, in my opinion, wastes precious man hours. In fact, there are 2 hours that can be spared. Last evening, as I spoke to you, when I came out there were 2 or 3 stations that were still working at around 6 o'clock or after 6. That is because 7 or 8 of the stations had shut up shop because no boxes were issued to them for counting. I advocated at the start of this process that boxes be counted in sequential order. That is to say, from the start of the region and continue. An objection or an explanation was given today that because of that sequential issue, they can't break the sequence. They can't break the sequence to accommodate smaller boxes, perhaps with shorter times in the afternoon. I think that's nonsense, because what's happening, even though for the most part we are going sequentially in the region, sometimes the sequence is broken for more than one reason. Perhaps sometimes a box is packed a little differently, etc. So I don't see, if we are to use proper logic and logistics in this process, and to have an intention to maximize the use of our time in this exercise, it makes good sense. Perhaps at the last evening I was using a cricketing term. The night watchman in this should be a small box. The only difference is with a night watchman, you don't have a box remaining open overnight. You use a small box in the evening if necessary. But with some degree of efficiency, even if a normal sized box is issued at 5 o'clock, you have 2 hours to 7 o'clock to work on that box. So that shortening of the time is having an adverse effect on the efficiency of this process. Because if the actual number of boxes that are counted today, I believe that number can easily be increased by at least 5, 6, 7, probably even 10 boxes. Because as we are here, lots of the stations have already either are winding down or have wound down, or there are no boxes. I've seen persons from several stations sitting and there already. A lot have left. You might have noticed them leaving. So that's the first issue I want to deal with. The second issue is this observation report. You'd recall that we've had long discussion on this observation report. It is my respectful view that now there are attempts to use this observation report as a propaganda tool. Why do I say that? In the first instance, the observation report was placed there with the intention of logging observations related to the ballot box that is in front of the counting station. And I listed some examples of what the contemplation was to be included in that observation report. There were 3 seals instead of 2. There were no party seals, that a logbook was not there, things like that, things related to the box. What we have witnessed over the last 3 or 4 days is representatives of one particular party coming and bringing and seeking to introduce all sorts of extraneous information into that observation report. On the first day, it was a death certificate. And at some instances, no documents were produced. Questions were being asked about particular names on lists, particular serial numbers. In fact, today, I observed in one of the stations, perhaps a lottery system was being tried. About 14 or 15 names were serial numbers on a list were called, and inquired into whether those names were ticked. When it was pointed out that only 4 of those 14 numbers that were called were ticked, the representative then sought to have those 4 objections drawn to those 4 names. I must remind that what is happening here is tantamount to an appellate process. It ought not to countenance the inclusion of what is called new information. Because on the day of poll, persons would have had, each stakeholder was at liberty to provide a polling agent to observe the process. As far as I'm aware, in all 2,339 polling stations, there were at least 2 polling agents present. That is to say, a polling agent for the PPP and a polling agent for the AP and UAFC. As a consequence, those persons, along with the presiding officers, etc., who were there, had the opportunity, and I hate to have to rehash this, but it is a point worth making again. They had the opportunity to look and see all of the persons who come, observe their physical features, observe their demeanor, etc. Look and see them. Look and see whether they resemble a ghost, perhaps, but they had the opportunity to see there. And to now come and to say and to have the ipsa dixit allegations of a representative included in that observation report, I believe is a disingenuous attempt to introduce new evidence or to introduce new propaganda information in a process that at a point where it ought not to be. And I said this last evening as well. I believe that the opportunity that may be available to a stakeholder to question the veracity of that allegation made by a particular party representative, to have that information included there is absolutely non-existent. If they point out that, look, John Jones is dead, and that is included there, if John Jones is not dead, he does not have an opportunity to come. At what point does he come and say, look, I'm alive and well, and I did in fact vote, and I'm still alive and I'm well? There is no opportunity to do that. Where is John Jones? Where's a party who subsequently learns that, look, this John Jones that they claim was dead is available? Where is that opportunity to the party to present that information? It absolutely does not exist. And if, insofar as the process allows one party to make such an insertion into that observation report without providing an opportunity at some subsequent time, immediately or otherwise, to have that challenged, if that process is, if that opportunity is non-existent, then this whole thing is a farce. I will get back to the publication of the observation report in a second, because the second aspect, or the second inclusion that is being sought in this observation report, is the inclusion of migration information. The Chief Justice had ruled very specifically in that case that is now famously referred to as the house-to-house case, that residency is not a requirement to vote. So it matters not if someone had migrated, they were at liberty to come back and vote. But that is beside the point. What is being sought to be introduced here are immigration records that are within the control and custody of persons who seek office out of this process. You'd recall the whole fiasco in relation to the movement of Haitians, and Minister Felix, who was responsible for citizenship, did not know that, or could not account that tens of thousands of Haitians left Guyana through Brazil or the left-hand border or whatever, and could not account for that. And this is the kind of information that we are being told to rely on to include in an observation report that forms a part of the official record of the Guyana Elections Commission coming out of this recount process. But why is that important? Why? And you see, I've been craving transparency in this process. Thankfully, these insidious attempts to insert these kinds of things into the process are transparent as well. Maybe that's the kind of transparency I was looking. You know why it has become so transparent? Because moves are now afoot to have that observation report given the kind of prominence that will then highlight the improper information that was placed in there. Why do I say that? In the first instance, an application was made, and this application, or this suggestion to publicize the observation report was brought to the Commission by Roxanne Myers, the Deputy Chief Election Officer. That if you are going to start tabulating now, then you have to show the observation report. Despite our stringent objections to it, the chairman agreed, and in the first instance, what had happened is that and you're all seeing the live streams on TV of the results from the tabulation center. The general statement of recount is shown, and the spreadsheet is shown as it is inputted, and then the observation report is shown. On the first day, it was complained that it was not being shown for a long enough time. That time was increased. Yesterday, as I reported, the tabulation went very smoothly without any hitch. There were a few left at the cutoff time of 6:30. This afternoon, at the start of play, that was quickly inputted. But what came today? What came today? We were told today that the differently abled were not able to access this information. So what they want now? They want the observation report to be read, and they want the observation report to be dictated in sign language out there. Now, I don't know what they will come and ask for tomorrow. Maybe tomorrow, and I mean absolutely no disrespect to differently able persons, but I would like as much as possible to facilitate them, but I don't know when the boundaries or the goalposts will stop moving. Because we've started the process, it seems to be going well, but there are deliberate attempts to frustrate the process. So the decision was made today. The chairman agreed that, look, she has no difficulty with the reading out of the report, and that has happened. There has been no decision yet on the sign language aspect of it. Now, that brings me to the final issue that I wish to raise this evening on my own volition, and that is to say that after this decision was taken close to 4 o'clock this afternoon, minutes to 4, and immediately after the commission meeting at which it was taken, I went up to the tabulation center because we also made a decision that the tabulation will now begin at 4 p.m. instead of 5 p.m., which gives a little bit more time to facilitate this process. I went up to the tabulation center and I heard complaints. There were complaints from every stakeholder in that room. One complaint was that you're coming to tell us at 4:05 that you are starting at 4 o'clock, a process that was originally intended to start at 5 o'clock. Now, that was a fairly justifiable complaint, but then it went further. Persons had objections. Several of the stakeholders raised objections to the implementation of a whole new process without any further notice, without any further consultation, etc. And they complained bitterly that those aspects, these changes, were not in keeping with the gazetted order. There is no provision in the gazetted order for either the display or the reading out or signing or any other thing of the observation report. It was part of that order that the observation report forms part of the report from the station on each box, but that what will be tabulated and live streamed would be the spreadsheet and the corresponding statement of recount. It is my respectful view that there was a staff member who was tasked with communicating that to the stakeholders and had to bear the brunt of the wrath of the stakeholders because they felt as though it was not properly communicated to them. The questions they had were not being answered, and several of them attempted to seek an audience with the chairman so as to register their concerns as to the conduct of this process and to seek to have clarity on how the process will proceed. That I empathize with the chairman. She has a full plate before her, but I believe that perhaps she needs to make herself accessible, perhaps even to you, to seek to provide clarity on some of these decisions and communicate it to persons in a timely manner so that they can make the necessary arrangements and perhaps give their input, because everyone has an input which may be useful to the efficient conduct of this process.
Second, Raj, there are issues with the particular ballot box here, and a list of electors was missing from the box, and the commission was to make a decision on that. But what will be done with it? If it will be tabulated or not tabulated? What any decision on that is?
No decision has been made on that, and I do recall you raising it yesterday and me addressing it, but I can tell you that today it did not come to the commission again, so that means that no decision was made on it.
Yesterday we were told that in addition to that ballot box, there were several others whose SORs were being held in abeyance until issues were settled about whether they'd be included in tabulation or not. Was any decision made on any of those boxes?
Well, I have no information as to the existence of several ballot boxes with problems. In any event, the decision, I believe the general decision and the general principle adopted is that every single box must be counted, a statement of recount produced for that box, and if there are any anomalies or differences, that those should be included in the observation report. As I stand here, I am unaware of several boxes. As you've said, I know that there was issue of one box and which a decision has not been made on. But as far as I'm aware, it is not a major problem, and in any event, it will have to be tabulated. It will have to be tabulated.
One party agent raised an issue with the commission making a decision on a list of issues and resolution. Did such a discussion take place at the commission meeting today to issue such
a document detailing decisions that have been made?
What is the position? Was it a document or to filter that information through the complaint mechanism system that is?
So, prior to the start of this process, at the commission level, and when the CARICOM observers met with us, it was agreed, and if I can bring that term out here, but it was called a basket of issues. We considered that there is likely to be issues that will pop up in stations. Some of those issues, one of the first issues that we've had to deal with was the existence of problems with stamps. I've come out here and I've spoken about that. Stamps, you recall on elections day, many of you reported that there was a big issue with stamps. We took a decision on that. What we intended to do, but clearly did not do, prior to the start of the process, was to make a list of those issues and what our decision on it would be. So when such issues arise and a station says, well, look, X is the problem, Y is the answer, and we go on. That has not happened. Ever since we started this process on Wednesday, we attempted to properly formulate that basket. It has not yet been formulated. Today, formally at the commission, we have gotten a list of issues. We've got, I think the list has 8 or 9 items on it. What needs to now be done is to have that list expanded upon, because you have now the issues. What we have to have appended thereto are the solutions to those issues. That has not yet been completed, but I believe that we will need to meet in short order to have that completed, because there are recurring issues that are arising in various stations, and the problem that we have with that is one, the communication of the information, because obviously I tell you something and you have the responsibility of passing it on to someone else. The information may be lost in transmission, and we've had instances where uneven information is being passed to things. So what we've asked, and what we are I'm advocating strongly, and we're probably getting there very soon. We've asked that that list of issues be properly populated, all the solutions are there, and it be publicized and presented to each supervisor. So when these issues pop up, I would even advocate for that list of issues to be publicized, so that stakeholders in the process will be aware of it. So that when an issue pops up, someone can easily say, oh well, this is the solution, and we move on. See, there's no argument, there's no running above, there's no running below, and we don't need to reinvent the wheel every single time an issue pops up. That is with the understanding, of course, that perhaps you may not have uniformity of issues sometimes, and there may be new issues, or there may be variations of those issues. All of that is to be taken into consideration. However, what we want to do, for the most part, is to have as many of the issues as are recurring, documented, and dealt with.
Are there any arguments for that list of issues and resolutions to not be shared with the public?
I don't think, I was offering my view on publication of it. I don't believe there should be any violent objections to the publication of it. There are issues that everyone will have to deal with in any way, in any event, and to have it, to me, it makes our process easier if everyone knows what the problems that are likely to be and what the solutions are. So it's not something that you hide in your pocket and say, well, I'm peeping to see the answer. Everybody keep knocking all the time. Everybody sees what the issues are and have them dealt with.
Okay, of the commission start to wrap their heads around the whole notion about the time a ballot box will take, because that seems to be coming up every day, and even you mentioned it in terms of the process. I know a review meeting is scheduled, but have you started to wrap your head around what will be a difficult time for
You know what? I have been walking around this facility almost continuously all day when I'm here, and I'm going. It's almost like a rotation. I go to 1 to 10, and then 10 to 1 sometimes, and I'm going there, and I'm seeing various paces. I'm seeing various paces, and there are some stations. Everyone is working hard in here. It's a tedious process that everyone is doing. But what I would like to see is some efficiency in the process. I am seeing some things and some procedures, and I've spoken about it in our commission meeting. I have seen some procedures where it's clearly not necessary. It's clearly not necessary. And last evening, you were stressing on the order. If you have a practical application of the order and have good sense prevail, for example, let me give you an example. I saw in several stations this morning, in polling stations on elections day, everyone is given a folio. Everyone, the party agents and so on. Those folios are for information purposes. They are for merely to help through the process. It matters not if all the folios were returned there or not. I've seen them painstakingly counting folio number 1, folio number 2. For me, that's a waste of time. Clearly, that's a waste of time. We don't need to go through 10 folios. But persons sometimes are trying to stick slavishly or even expand the tenets of the order. And things like that slow down the process. That brings me back to your question about the time. I would love, or when we have a review meeting as to the time, to determine that, look, this is going to take 20 days, or 22 days, or 19 days, because you know what? We're all tired, and we all want to get this done in a timely and efficient manner. But what I see happening here is this deliberate attempt at slowing down the process. You even see some party agents discussing, hey, this station moving too fast, we gotta watch it. But you know what? I am hoping and I am appealing to everyone involved in the process. Everyone wants to get this done in a timely manner. Let's work towards getting that done.
Would you speak to one report that there is a disparity, a marked disparity, between figures on the statements of recount and Mr. Mingo's figures? I
have seen reports. But I'll want to make a comment on a singular one. When Mr. Mingo was calling out or presided over the calling out of figures on the morning of the 13th of March at the Ashman's building, you'd recall later on in the afternoon he moved to the Kingston. On that morning, I had statements of poll in my hand that I received from the CEO's process that I verified to have included the security features, and that was signed by 2 commissioners. I had that in my hand. And I heard a number being called on the by the persons in front, and it did not correspond.
And could you recall who it was skewed in favor of?
I can't recall that. Yes, I do recall. It represented an addition of about 40 votes in favor of the APNU plus EF. I objected, and I asked. I remember this vividly because I asked, and when I was objecting, several policemen were called into the room. And I remembered first of all objecting and saying that I don't care how many police officers you call, it will not stop my objection. And the second thing I did was to show, I said I would like to see what your statement of poll is, because this is what mine is. This is what I have received as a commissioner. And they refused. So that one was fresh in my mind. Last evening, I took a picture of it. Last evening, interestingly, that box was counted, and I have seen that box. I don't recall the number of the box for the division, but it was one one on these banks that was already and it was tabulated yesterday. I have seen that statement of recount, and it matches identically the statement of poll that I have. And I have the audio of that one being called by Mr. Mingo. That was not there. For me, that one was the tip of the iceberg, because I heard several others, but that one has all the elements. The statement of poll, the statement of recount, and Mingo's bingo. The three of them are all there. So, yes, I can't comment on it, and I can tell you that is what my observation is.
So does GECOM intend to, or would you advocate for an official comparison between all of the statements of recount at the end of this process to the figures that were produced by Mr. Mingo, or all the SOPs in GECOM's position?
Yes, I would. Yes, I would.
What are the penalties if they don't match?
The implications.
Or the implications? What
Well,
accountability?
Well, there are several remedies that can be determined from that. I would prefer not to address my mind to it, because I'm addressing my mind to the several issues that we are dealing with in here at this time. But I hear your question. I have certain views on it, but I prefer to crystallize those views before I make them public.
Thank you.